That's it. So we're at 55 seconds. It's perfect. Now, if
this were more of an editing video, I would talk about how really good B-roll would work really well with this.
Such as seeing a background of a...
in fact, I'm going to do it because we're here, so why not? Have you ever wished that you could add captions using DaVinci Resolve? The good news is now you can. Rather than having to go through and add individual titles to every single minute, every word said, there's actually a built-in AI thanks to using DaVinci Resolve Studio 18.5, which is the one that I'm using. There is a built-in way to use AI to caption videos for you. Now this works for both long form and short form content, but today we're going to be working on a short. So I have this short that's already been pre-edited. I've already uploaded it using this right here, this lovely little guy. You drop it down onto the timeline, and remember, a short has to be under a minute if you want it to go on YouTube. Ideally it'll be under a minute on any platform, but you want to play it, make sure the audio comes across fine.
Thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about.
Perfect. So now what you do is you come up here to timeline at the very top. You've got DaVinci Resolve file edit, blah, 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 timeline. You scroll down and you'll see create subtitles from audio. Now here you'll have a couple different options, right? You'll be able to choose the language. You can choose subs, and I keep all this default. Now that max characters, I usually like to put this because we're not using the landscape, we're using portrait since it's going to be a short. We're going to put this down to 16 characters. And lines, I like to do double. And so what's going to happen here, gap between lines, you don't need to worry about that. And then you'll hit create. So what's going to happen here is it's going to generate captions. Now they're not going to be perfect. There may be some misspellings, especially if you have names or rare words that aren't in the everyday vernacular, vocabulary, whatever. So you'll want to double check, obviously. So we're going to go ahead and hit create. It'll take a minute to initialize it, and it's actually not very long at all. Now, this versus CapCut, I found the CapCut is actually a little bit faster, and I do like the edit options with that a little bit more. But as you can see, we now have a subtitle 1 timeline on here. So, and what it's doing is it's keeping it under the certain characters that I asked for, and it's breaking it up. So, how this works is much like in CapCut. If you click on one, you'll notice that you can hit customize caption. So right now, any edits that I do to one of them will change all of them. If I just wanted to change this one, I can go customize caption, and then I can change it to whatever I want. Now you'll notice these are the 2 lines. So if I say the thin skull rule, say I wanted to actually have it broken up, I can go like this, capitalize, have the T, and then I want to have it say skull rule. And I actually wanted 3 lines on this instead. Here's the nice thing about that is it's actually pretty easy to do just that. So go like that. And then I say that we want this to pop more. Let's pick a different one. We'll go Comica Access, Comica Crack. Now these are not 2 fonts that usually come with DaVinci Resolve. You can actually find them and have them added or add in that. That'd be for a whole nother tutorial. But I like Comica because I call it the Mr. Beast font. It looks like Mr. Beast's regular font. But I like Cracked in this because we're talking about something crazy, the thin skull rule that people don't normally know about. And so we can raise or lower the size of it. We can change the color. I'm going to change the color to red because I want it to really pop. And you'll notice it now automatically has like a little outline built into this. That's totally okay too. We can change this where we want this to be. Now the same rules apply. Keep in mind where, and I don't like how this is looking right now. I forgot because of and I think it's because of the font size, right? So if I break this up a little bit more and go thin skull rule, right? And then now I can bump up the size and it'll actually look interesting. Thin skull rule, it's not. Now again, I don't really care for the cracks in this after all, so we'll change it up. And if I go over to, you've got caption and track. So if I go over to track, I can actually decide how big I want the stroke to be. Now whatever I do on this one will impact, potentially impact all of them. So keep that in mind. So I don't like how much space there is between these, so I'm going to change the line spacing. And to get here, by the way, I clicked on track, right? So, and we're going to say I don't want, so it says
the thin skull rule.
Now, it's not. I don't want that to be like that. So if I just click on the line I'm on here, and then I hit Control B, that stands for blade, so it cuts that off. So now I go back to the caption, thin skull rule, I can get rid of the word it's not, and then I'm going to change this on the second one, I just clicked over on the second one here, and I'm just going to go with it's not, okay? So how it's going to look is
The thin skull rule. It's not
something that and see, you'll notice that the thickness of the lines has stayed the same, even though the actual font itself, the caption and stuff, is changed to what I wanted before. So now, can we animate this? That's a question that you might be thinking. Kind of. If I go to track, you can actually decide if you want to add drop shadow. I'm a fan of having drop shadow on these because it makes it pop more, as you can see. And then you might add more blur or see what I mean? So it'll make it really pop or not. You can add background colors. So actually animating it though, the closest thing you can do is if we go, right now we've been on the cut tab, if we pop over to the edit tab, you can zoom in really quick here, and see, you can't even do that. I thought you'd be able to make it fade in and fade out. You can't really do that. So the downside is no, without actually adding a title, you can't necessarily animate this stuff to come on. And that's kind of a bummer, kind of a pain, but it is what it is. You know, at least we can get this automated. If you want to use DaVinci Resolve exclusively and you don't want to use CapCut, now you have an option for that. So you can also, I just clicked on it, you can also grab it and drag it wherever you want. So that works well too. And again, we can raise or shrink that. Now, what I don't like is that I can't choose where the lines are thinner. So you know, when I click on track and I can change the line spacing, the downside is it's going to do that to all of them, not just this one, even though this is the one that for this caption, it's the one that I edited to be interesting. Now, the other thing you can do to make it a little bit more animated, a little bit more interesting, is you can divide this up a bit. So the thin, right? So we're going to leave the word the thin. I'm going to hit Control B for blade, skull. We're going to hit B for blade and rule, right? Now, what's interesting is that I can take this and drag it up here. Oh, maybe. There we go. And backspace, I can pull that out so that it layers, right? And I guess I can't do that either. Dang it. So what I was trying to do there, we'll just backspace that. What I was going to try and do is with titles, if you're using titles instead of actual subtitles, you can actually have it so that it layers, and so the thin skull rule would pop up one at a time rather than all of them at once. So, I mean, it's going to work for this. This is going to be a simple tutorial on how to add captions and make sure they're okay. And so far, I've done like the first 1 second, so I should probably get on with the rest of it. But my whole point here is that there are ways to animate, add a little bit of oomph to it, but you just have to do it a little bit different. Now, if I click on the actual text here, now you'll notice I'm in the Cut tab instead of the Edit tab. There are some other things that you can do here. Now remember, this is going to do this to all of the tracks, not just this one. So if I wanted to, I could do, I could zoom it all in and out. I could blur it a little bit more. So there's some minor things you can do, but nothing too major.
The thin skull rule. It's not.
And now we're back to the regular, what all the other fonts are, right? So if I go back to caption, you'll notice that the custom caption one is not checked, because it's not just for this, it's for all of them. And that's okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set what we want the rest to be. I want the rest to be Comica because I really love that one for these type of things. And I want all of them to be a lot bigger, right? And I want all of them. So again, this is going to be for pretty much every single one of them unless I change it, right? And then I'm actually going to change the color to the internal color to my brand colors, which in this case is I'm using the chroma key FF8200 is the orange. So there's that, and then the drop shadow is still on there, so that's good. So if I just play this out,
The thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about.
now you'll notice, see, so it's keeping with my character request of how many characters I want on screen, so it cut this off for me, so now I need to go back and edit it. And this is why you can't just trust it in post, is because you want to make sure that you get it right and that it looks okay on screen. And changing the font size might be the thing that does that, so you got to be careful with that as well. So again, font size is a little bit big on this one, so we're going to shrink it down a tiny bit. Ooh, it'll let me. Oh, I see why. So the reason is because I'm on this. I haven't done. It says customize caption, so I'm going to do this. Shrink it down a little bit. There we go.
Pete.
Now we're going to pop over this one, Pete. Boom, and then I'm going to go over to track so I can actually, you know what? We'll keep it on caption and we'll make this a little bit bigger.
What all are we talking about?
Again, it's breaking this up a little bit too much, a little bit more than I wanted. So, generally speaking, you want to leave a little bit on each sides because you have, and I mentioned this in a previous video, but I'm going to talk about it again. You have the like and the comment, the share, all that stuff is here, and then you're going to have your channel icon here, the name of your channel, and your description down here. So that's how it is on almost all short form videos. So this is kind of a no zone. So because this is going to impact all of them, that's fine. We're going to shrink this down. And you'll notice too, because I have the line spacing so tight, if I shrink down too much, it starts cutting off the bottom half. And so that's not as visually appealing. Now, I will tell you, I believe the captions, using these captions, are better than nothing. That said, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that it's not animating, right? So if I wanted to animate it, let's say I did, okay? Now, this is another editing tip that I'm just throwing in. You want as little of dead air as possible. So I'm going to pop over here, and you see this little dead air here? That's literally a second. But the shorter the short, the better people are going to like it. So I'm actually going to click on this. I'm going to hit Control B for blade. Come over to this one, hit Control B for blade, and then this is a tip that's going to save you so much time and energy. Hit backspace. If you hit delete, it'll delete everything above it too, and that can be a pain. So always, always, always try to get in the practice of just hitting backspace. Because then instead of just completely deleting it, it just removes it, and then you can click here, hit backspace again, and it'll shrink it up. So I know that the thin skull rule caption, we need to change this like that. Now, it's on his mouth. We don't want it on his mouth, right? So we're going to actually end up moving it down a little bit. And so that'll be position down here. There we go. And I've still left enough room on each side so it doesn't break that little rule.
Is a rule of law that says.
Here we go. Again, we have the same problem where it's not breaking up exactly how I want it to. Now, if it's too long, I like to keep it 2 to 3 lines. If it's too much more than that, then you can break it up even more. So if I say
law that says if somebody has a condition.
Okay, I'm debating changing things up, but so the other thing too is in my in other videos I talked about how you want things to pop more, right? So if I go thin skull rule, I go customize this. We're going to change this internal color, but specifically cancel that. We're going to go thin skull rule, and then I'm hoping it'll let me do this. I don't recall if it does or not. Okay, yep, so you'll notice it just got those colors, right? The thin skull rule is a rule of law. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll leave it. Okay.
A rule of law that says if somebody has a condition that.
Now I guarantee you, because of my lack of animation on the text here, this video is not going to perform as well as the one that I did in CapCut, because that one has much more pop.
Makes them more susceptible
To injury. So this is another big set of big words, right? To injury or. Now I'm not a huge fan of just how much this is encroaching on the sides here. So we're going to go customize caption. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit more. And even though it looks tiny here, keep in mind when you're looking at the screen on somebody's phone, it's going to look about that big. Well, I'm exaggerating, but you'll still be able to read it, is my point.
Injury. Or more susceptible to.
Now we've got susceptible to. To a worse. See, you got to play around with this a little bit sometimes. But this is essentially it. I mean, if you just desperately want to get captions on, you want to do it quick and dirty, this is the way to do it. Because it's faster, and if you've never had captions on a short, it does change everything. I mean, it definitely will perform better than if I had no captions on here at all. In most cases, that's the case, but yeah.
Cover for the entire injury.
Now, entire injury is important enough that I would want that on one slide, right? So I'm going to actually do something interesting here. We're going to delete this word. We're going to add a paragraph break here and go injury. And then I want to highlight this whole thing, customize the caption, and just for this one, I'm going to go red, the entire injury, and then we're going to drag this out. Now you see this is where the word injury was, so we're going to drag this out and have it take over that. So now we've just replaced it. So it says
Cover for the entire injury. So let's just roll with
the thin skull. Roll with the thin skull. What a cool phrase, right? But it's heavy metal as it comes. So roll with the thin skull. So just like that.
the thin skull. You've got two people. One has a normal.
All right, so now when you're ready to export this, we're literally, I think, maybe halfway through this video. Let me double check. Yeah, and it's a minute long. So rather than making you go through all of it with me, what I'm going to do is speed run this next part. And when I'm done speed running it, I will show you at the end how we export the video. Because that is important, because if you forget to check a couple of boxes, all this work you're doing on these won't matter because nobody will see it. So without further ado, let's do some super fast editing. Now I've reached an interesting point where it did not caption something it was supposed to. There's a few ways to add that. I could either right click on here and go add subtitle, but then it might erase some of this. So the easiest thing to do is click on the most recent one and then drag this all the way out to where the new caption is going to start.
It's like one person has a normal skull, the other.
So the word the other,
Normal skull.
we're going to go ahead and add a break there. And now one person has a normal skull is
One person has a normal skull.
what was said here, right? So I guess I don't need quotes there. One thing I do like about this is one of the things I do like about Vinci Resolve's captioning is that it actually does add the punctuation usually, so that's kind of nice.
Well, the other person has.
Now the other person is good, but it needs to be broken into 3 lines, I think. There we go. And now back to speed captioning, speed editing.
Has a thin.
They recover for the entire injury. So that's it. So we're at 55 seconds. It's perfect. Now, if this were more of an editing video, I would talk about how really good B-roll would work really well with this, such as seeing a background of a. In fact, I'm going to do it because we're here, so why not? So if while we're editing this, one of the things that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go ahead and add a little bit of B-roll over it. We want to make this as good of a video as possible, especially and even short. So I'm opening this up now. I have a bunch of B-roll that I've actually saved that is like medical and things like that, and I even have a section for X-rays specifically, right? So I'm going to take this image of, we have this guy right here, right? And this is actually a shoulder injury one, and I'm going to double check, make sure it's the one I want to see. Yep, this one works. So we're going to, I did that in another window, so we're going to bring this in and we're going to go all the way back to the very beginning here and I want it to grab attention, so I'm actually going to put it, I'm going to see if this works. I'm hoping it'll, yep, there we go. So now what it's going to do is it's popping my B-roll underneath the caption. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom all the way in. I'm going to move this down. I'm going to move it over a little bit. Move it down a little bit more because this is all about this dude's head, right? And then I'm going to add the effect. I want to have the, one of my favorite effects is the, where is it, flicker? Yeah, flicker edition. So it's going to flicker a little bit. And then we're going to see how this looks.
The thin skull rule.
Now, it's just that little bit to grab attention of the fact that we're talking about a skull. Now, so honestly, I think we can go even deeper with this skull and zoom in even more, bring it over and down. Now, what's crazy about this, the reason that this hack will work, this little tiny bit of adding B-roll at the last second, I was about to export it, I was about to be done. But what I realized as I was doing that was, you know what, no, we want to make this as good as possible, and you can do this at the last second. It doesn't have to be something that you wait till the very end. Now, something so what's going to catch the most attention? Would it be that? Yeah, but if I invert the color, it'll even be even more so that. So I'm going to pop this in here, and the reason this will grab attention is because, one, it's going to pop off of the timeline, and two, it's just jarring, I think. So
The thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about.
now, it's not something a lot of people know about. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right where it's between these cuts, right? And I'm going to click on this main one, hit Control B to add the blade, right? And then I'm going to pop over here to the Edit tab, and I'm going to make it fade a little bit. So how it's going to look now is this.
The thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about.
And actually, I'm even going to go one step further. I'm going to go Dynamic Zoom, and now that's turned on. And so it's actually going to start real close and pan out a little bit.
It's not something that a lot of people know about. Pete,
Boom.
what all are we talking about here?
So now we've just changed in the first 4 seconds. We've gone through 3 different scenes, 3 different people. We've got Pete, we've got Ginger, and we've got this skeleton guy. And to add one more element to grab attention, we're going to come back over to the Cut tab. We're going to go Media. We're going to add media, and instead of clips and B-roll, I'm going to go to my sounds file because I have a sounds file as well, and I have hospital sounds and heartbeats. So I'm going to go, let's do heartbeats and then ambient hospital, okay? And I got all of these from a source that we have. I don't know if I really want to talk about it, but now you'll come down. What I did was I popped right back over to this Edit tab, right? And I'm going to grab this, I'm going to drop it right here. And now you'll notice this is kind of a slow grow, right? So here we go.
The thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about.
And since it fades away, we're going to make it fade away too. So we're going to click this again, hit Control B, and this is kind of hard to see, so I'm going to open it up. And it's subtle, but it should be enough to help grab attention. Now, by the way, if I would have hit delete just now instead of backspace, it would have deleted everything above it, and that's why I was like, I always hit backspace. And I just noticed that this caption is a little bit too wide. It'll get cut off, and we'll just see no spelled wrong. So I'm gonna drop that down a little bit, and I want to make sure the rest are okay too. There we go. So let's see how it watch.
The thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about. Pete.
Now you see how that did that? I mean, that really essentially changed everything in that moment of I mean, in my opinion, it changed everything in grabbing it. It took what would have been a somewhat mediocre and made up for it. And I could have left it the same. Now, honestly, if I was using the other program, if I was using CapCut, I probably would have let the strength of the transitioning of the text be enough. But since it's not, I'm adding B-roll. So I'm going to go through and watch this one last time before I export it, because I know there's probably going to be another example, another opportunity for me to add some B-roll and maybe some sound to it to really make this thing pop.
The thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about. Pete, what all are we talking about here?
Thin skull rule is a rule of law.
Now, rule of law, that's something I'm a big fan of. Show, don't tell, right? So I'm going to come over here, go back into my media pool. We're going to go back into my library of clips and B-roll. We're going to go to court, and I have a gavel dropping down. And I'm going to drop that right here. And actually, I happen to know. I'm going to zoom this. And I only need a certain part.
The thin skull rule is a rule of law.
Now you see how that just hammered down and then lifted back up. So all I need is that. So I'm going to hit Control B to cut this part out, hit backspace, and then this I'm going to go, we're going to see how add works. And I like add because it puts it over the top of Pete without it being overbearing, you know what I mean, without it being too much. And the other thing that's really cool about this is that subconsciously this kind of looks like the hammer is hitting Pete. And as much as I love Pete, and I'm not saying I want to hurt him or anything, a hammer hitting a skull while you're talking about thin skull, I mean, it's a subtle thing. It's thinking it through. It's going that extra step. The other thing that you want to do is maybe come over to transitions and go cross dissolve. And the reason for that is that then it's going to make it fade in a lot more naturally. So now let's see how that looks.
Thin skull rule is a rule of law that says if somebody
that says, and see, the hammer came down, settle, and then I can just hit this, hit Control B again, cut the rest of this out, and then do another cross dissolve out. And so if you didn't know where I grabbed that, I went to transitions. Now you can hit the star by any of the transitions and it'll save it to your favorites, and then you can reuse them. And I have a lot of them that I use that are like reusing. Another good example is warp. Warp makes it spin around and come in, and that actually might have even been cooler. Let's see how that looks. So if I pop warp on there, let's see what that looks like.
Is a rule of law that says if somebody
now see, the problem with that is that it doesn't fade in very well. It wants to show the whole thing and it's too much, so we're not going to do that. But that's how you would warp in, and I know that was another editing tutorial that had been requested. So we're going to put that back to cross dissolve, and it should be good. We'll make sure.
Is a rule of law that says if somebody.
Now I can actually do this. If I come down here and I click on this and I right click on it and I go change speed and I bump the speed up to 2, it'll show the hammer hitting twice, hopefully. Let's see.
Is a rule of law that says if
Yep,
somebody has a condition that makes them more susceptible
to injury, more susceptible to injury. Now I know I have some injury stuff. So let's go ahead. Now the idea is that you want to have something changing at least every few seconds, and text is the bare minimum. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my media pool, I'm going to go back to my import, I'm going to pop over to my clips and b-roll, and like I said, I have quite a bit here. Let's go back to medical, and I will have, just a moment here, injury. So I have this guy here grabbing his arm, and I feel like that would be a good one for injury. I'm going to open that up. And there's a part where he grabs his shoulder, and
more susceptible to injury.
now here's what I'm going to do that's a little bit different. Instead of having it take up the whole scene, because we like to change it up, keep people on their feet, I'm moving it. I've got it blown up fine. We're going to move it down here so it comes across the bottom, so he's essentially still talking about it. I'm also going to go ahead and add an effect here. We're going to add film damage, because then it looks kind of like an old school video, and I still like flicker. These are just, you know, my personal choices on this. And now I want this to fade in, but just ever so slightly, so I'm manually going to do that, and watch.
Makes them more susceptible to injury or more susceptible to a worse injury.
Now we want that to fade back out now. Right about here, so we're going to hit Control B to cut that out, and then do our little fade out, right? So now here's how it's going to look.
More susceptible to injury or more susceptible to a worse injury, they recover for the entire.
Now, for recover, you know, this is kind of, in lawyer speak, recover means what they win, right? But the average person may not realize that when we say recover for, what we're talking about is how much money they're going to win back, right? So what I'm going to do to really sell that and hit it home is I'm going to bring in one of my favorite things. If I go back to my media pool, and this is one of my favorite transitions, I love this, and I go back to clips and b-roll, I go to transitions, and I literally call this the money shot, and it's money pouring down, right? So I drop this bad boy in here, I'm going to put it on add, and I'm going to rotate it because it's actually it's a landscape instead of portrait, so I'm going to rotate this one 90 degrees, and
recover for the entire injury.
Now we zoom this puppy in. Right there. Now, I just saw this too. We've got two people. That one needs to change. It's too big, see? So you got two people. So, the cool thing about this transition that I like the best, it falls out. Now, it's too long. I want it shorter, so I'm going to change the speed again. Right-click, change the speed. And we're going to make this go about 2 times as fast. And so, now I have a sound effect that I like to use with this as well. Okay, so I'm going to pop over here, and I'm going to come up to, oh, I forgot, I gotta just go over to Media Pool, add, and we're gonna go back to assets, and we're gonna go back to sounds, where's sounds, there it is, and then we're gonna go to transitions, and one of the ones, I mean, there's quite a few in here that I like to use. The Money Bills Falling is a really good one. I also like, there's one that's a transition swoosh that I like to use. But for this one, we're actually, and there's even like cards falling. I think I still have that one too, or shuffling of cards. And so I'm gonna see if that's on here. If not, I can go with the money falling. Actually, I think I might have just renamed it Money Falling. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, Money Bills Falling. Okay. So there's this one, and then we'll go back into the edit, and Money Bills Falling, and we're gonna move it like this, and we gotta make sure to turn the volume down because it's loud. Listen to this. Way too much, right? Way too loud. And unfortunately, this is actually the sound of cards being shuffled, but I changed it to money falling on table because I like the idea of that. So now, because it moves back out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to put it right next to it, hit Control V, and it's going to add it again. And then this is a really cool little trick. I'm actually going to change the speed. So I can right click to do this, or the other way that I'm actually, yeah. So I can right click to change the speed, but with sound, it's easiest to do it here. Come over here and just hit this, the little double direction. Because now it's going to switch the sound of it. Check this out.
For the entire injury. So let's just roll with the
See? Rolled away, almost the perfect size. Still a little bit loud. So we're going to turn this down to like negative 13.74. 13.74. Up too far. Huh. 13, that doesn't matter. So,
for the entire injury. So let's just roll.
And in fact, I have decided that I'm going to go ahead and go normal. So we'll let it take over his face for a minute.
Cover for the entire injury. So let's just roll with the thin skull. You've got two people. One has a normal thick skull.
Now, I could be doing another image of a skull here, right? In fact, that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to use what I call the callback. So we'll pop back to this guy, right? Control C. I just copied it. I'll pop back over to where we were. Too far. Sorry, that's annoying. I apologize. There we go. And we're going to hit Control V. And so now we have this X-ray again, right? Now, because I'm going to hit Control C on this one more time. Now, so what's going to be funny is I'm going to hit Control B to get rid of this, delete that, hit backspace, hit Control C on this again, because now he has his little joke, right? So we go like this.
You've got two people. One has a normal thick skull.
Sure.
Maybe kind of.
But here's the funny thing. We don't want the color on there because it's, quote, normal, right? It's not as dangerous or whatever. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on it, and we're going to go to Effects, and we're going to turn off the invert color. So now it's going to have just this.
One has a normal thick skull.
Sure.
Maybe kind of like you.
Sure.
Serious.
So now he's going, seriously. So now we're going to come back here. We're going to hit Control V because I copied that earlier, right? And this one, I'm going to pop out a little bit more. So now it's going to say this.
Seriously. One person has a normal skull.
So normal skull.
Another person has a normal skull.
So now I'm going to hit Control B to cut this. I'm going to get rid of the effect of this being in inverted color, right? So now what'll happen is it'll go like this. It'll change right when he says it.
One person has a normal skull. The other person has a thin skull. You put both of those people in the same crash.
Now, same crash, right? Okay, so now watch this. We're going to come over here. I can't believe this became a full editing video. I apologize. Originally it was supposed to just be here's how you add captions, but it is what it is. So then if we come over to assets here, we go back to the B-roll and we go to crashes. I have a lot of crashes content. One of my favorites to use is this one right here. And we just pop that puppy right in. And we zoom in. We move it over to this. Now, I also have, of course, if you're going to add something that vivid, that important, let's go ahead and add a sound. Now, you're probably thinking, Steve, do you have a sound for crashes? Of course I do. Come on. And so there's different ones that I like. There's different ones that I don't like. Some of them are solid, some of them aren't, whatever. But this one is, right? Very juicy. So we're going to go car crash. We're going to open this. I've meant to, but I haven't yet. I've meant to just go ahead and add this sound to this B-roll, but you know, it is what it is. Haven't made time to do it. So now we've got this car crash sound. We're going to pop it right here. We're going to bump this way down because, of course, it's super loud, right?
You put both those people.
Now, here's where we do a little. This is kind of like the J cut, right? So watch this.
As a thin skull. You put both those people in the.
Now, I need that sound to line up with the moment of impact. So what we're going to do is we're going to speed this up a little bit. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. Because the moment of impact, if that doesn't line up, there's a disconnect in people. That's when the sound is. That's when the moment of impact is. So I need this to speed up quite a bit. So we're going to go speed. How's that? Now we can move this to where it hits. Still not fast enough for me. So pop that up even more.
You put both.
You know, I'm changing some. Oh, I see what it is. I'm changing the speed of the sound here. And no, I think I was. Yeah, I was changing the speed of this. I don't know why it wasn't going fast enough still. Wow. Okay.
A thin skull. You put both.
Wow, we're still not there. So I really like the idea of seeing it approach, though. That's the only problem. Because what I was going to do is just say, okay, let's just cut to the moment of impact. But I don't want to do that. We're going to keep speeding it up then.
You put both those people in.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to. Control B. Get rid of that. Bring that over.
You put both those people in the same crash, and the person with the thin.
Now we're going to go ahead and hit B on Control B on this one, and we'll fade this out. Hit Control B on the sound on this one, so we cut that out completely. So now, actually, we'll just have this trail some more. Okay. So here's how the final trick is.
Normal skull. The other person has a thin skull. You put both those people in the same crash, and the person with the thin skull is going to have significantly worse injury.
So, significantly worse injuries, right? Okay, so I do, you know, like I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all out, right? Might as well. And I should have probably had all of this edited properly like I did the other one before I started this tutorial, but two birds, one stone, you know? There you go. Okay, so back to the clips and B-roll and back to the medical, because I've got the hospital stuff. And the significantly worse injuries, I like the idea of using this guy sleeping, but I have a lot of other ones. Doctors talking about, talking to a patient. I've got x-rays. I've got a doctor talking about the x-rays. In fact, that might be, this is one of my favorites to use for this. So we'll grab this one and put this little loop on here, okay? And actually we're going to have this be an ad, and I'm going to zoom it all in. And actually, this is a really cool opportunity to show you something else too. So if I click on this, and then I click this little grid right here. Do you see it? Yep. Okay. So I've clicked on this grid. Now, I can click on this right here, and flip the switch, and put pan. And what it'll do is it'll make it slowly pan across that, whatever this is. And now I can add in my sound of the medical stuff again when that starts, and drop down the volume, of course, a little bit more. And watch this. This is going to be great.
Is going to have significantly worse.
Oh, ha.
Injuries.
Yeah, there we go.
Is going to have significantly worse injuries. Their brain isn't as protected from injury because of the thin skull. What the law says is because that person didn't have any symptoms, they weren't suffering any pain or...
Now, the sound is almost annoying at this point, so we're going to turn that down even more so it's very subtle.
Disability or anything because of the thin skull. It's just a condition they had, but they suffer a worse injury because of it.
Now, because of it, right? So this is the part that I know we want to go ahead and stop the distractive medical stuff. Control B on that, get rid of this. Control B on the sound, get rid of this. So now here's what's going to happen.
For a worse injury because of it, they recover for the entire.
So they recover for, I've decided I want to change that up too. I'd like that because we're talking about money to be more of a green color. So it looks like this.
Recover.
And we're going to put the word for. And I'm going to blow this up a little bit more. So.
It's just a condition they had, but they suffer a worse injury because of it. They recover for the entire injury.
Okay, so that's it. That's the short now. So essentially what we've done is we've gone through, we've added the captions. We added those first. Usually that's the last thing you do. I decided to add in some B-roll. I was just going to use the entire them talking, going back and forth, but we added B-roll, and B-roll is always enhanced by sound, so I added the sound as well. So there you go. That's pretty much it. And what you'll notice here too is I haven't added an ending. I've recently realized that when you just have it stop immediately, you expect the viewer expects it to continue on. They want to hear the rest of the story, right? So then the first thing that they're going to see when this plays through
The thin skull
is right back to that, right? So it continues the conversation. And so people will continue to watch it. So that's pretty much it. Now, when I'm ready to actually export this, you hit the little rocket ship like you normally would. And because it's got a lot to process, it's going to take a second. Any minute now, it'll pop over there. There we go. And what we're going to do, we'll decide what we want to title it. Thin skull rule short V2. And I'm going to browse where I want to put it. I know that I want to put it on my shorts content in the finished shorts. Hit save, and then I want to make sure that I put it as an MP4. Now here's the thing that needs to change, is down here at the bottom, you see there's subtitle settings. You have to click on this, and then you have to go export subtitle, click on that, and then you have to put burn into video. So now it's going to take all this caption, this whole subtitle that I created, and it's going to burn it in the video. You add it to the render queue, and ta-da, it's rendering. It should only take a few seconds. And once it's done rendering, I'll let you watch the whole new shebang here, and we'll see how it turned out. Should have turned out pretty good, I think. All right, so it says it's done. So now, if I go to that file and check out how it looks.
The thin skull
Oops, hold on. I'll go ahead and bring it over so that you can actually see it. There we go. Let's see how it looks.
The thin skull rule. It's not something that a lot of people know about. Pete, what all are we talking about here?
Thin skull rule is a rule of law that says if somebody has a condition that makes them more susceptible to injury or more susceptible to a worse injury, they recover for the entire injury. So let's just roll with the thin skull. You've got two people. One has a normal thick skull.
Sure.
Maybe kind of like you.
Sure.
Seriously, one person has a normal skull, the other person has a thin skull. You put both of those people in the same crash, and the person with the thin skull is going to have significantly worse injuries. Their brain isn't as protected from injury because of the thin skull. What the law says is because that person didn't have any symptoms, they weren't suffering any pain or disability or anything because of the thin skull. It's just a condition they had, but they suffer a worse injury because of it. They recover for the entire injury.
So now, we've just done the last part, which is quality assurance. Before you upload anything, you want to double check, make sure it looks right. Recover for the entire injury. I could have added the money thing again, but I didn't. The other thing I could have done, there's little things that you can do to add a little more. So, for example, there's a part where it says that, here we go. This, where the gavel hits, I have a sound of a gavel hitting there. I think it would have distracted, so I didn't add it. But that's pretty much it. The whole process took me about 49 minutes from start to finish, and this video is obviously going to be shorter because I plan to bring this into DaVinci in a different way and speed up the parts that I said I would so that you don't have to watch me edit everything. But 49 minutes total from start to finish, and you're ready to go for a 1 minute clip. So almost an hour for a 1 minute clip. What's the ROI? Well, if you did it right, it's going to spread a lot more and help grow your channel, help grow your business, and in this case, grow expertise. So I hope you found that valuable. If so, make sure that you check out the next video or that's popping up, which is about CapCut? No, CapCut. Yeah, anyway, check it out.